Hi, I'm Alex. Welcome to my channel. So for our video today, I'm going to be doing an overview of my 5-star reads for 2024. I read 27 books, and out of that, 8 of them were 5 stars. And I will do my best to talk about them without spoilers, but be aware that it may happen. I'll try my best, but... So, in no particular order, we'll start with Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a murder mystery. It is the second in the series. The first being Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. That being said, you don't technically need to read that to read this. I am not the world's biggest murder mystery person. Matter of fact, it's probably the one genre I don't read next to nonfiction, but this was a trip. It pretty much all takes place on or in a single setting. It follows the main character from the last book. He is invited to what I would call a writer's summit sort of thing. He is the new famous writer for writing about what happened in the last book. Obviously, someone dies, and because everyone on this train has written murder mystery, they all kind of know part of how to get away with it. They all kind of know. So they all decide to get together and figure out who did it. The characters are awesome. There are some you're genuinely going to hate, and some you're like, you're not so bad. I was expecting nothing about how everything played out. I am not someone who tries to solve the mystery, so I can't really judge on how obvious that would be to people who read murder mystery a lot. I couldn't figure it out. And when they finally unveiled it, I was like, oh, all the clues were laid out and I missed them entirely. I will give some warning that this does, especially toward the end, deal with some heavier subjects that are kind of the reason why this is all happening to begin with. I would definitely say check online for warnings and then just go into it when you're in the right headspace. The second book on my list is The Familiar by, I am going to pronounce her name wrong, Leigh Bardugo? Oh, someone correct me because I am not entirely sure how to pronounce that. This was a surprise to me. This is not something I would ever read. I would never have picked it up. It is a magical realism, magical history. I'm not quite sure what the genre would be called. This book takes place in Spain during the Inquisition. And that alone is the reason I would have never picked it up. This was part of B&K Book Club. And that is a book club run by BrittanyLovesReading, who I will link somewhere, somehow. I forget entirely how to do all of that. This follows Lucia, I believe is how it would be properly pronounced, and she is capable of magic, which is already setting her up for trouble considering her family is Jewish in Spain during the Inquisition. Yeah, that girl's got a lot to be afraid of. But because of her ability, she gets drawn into this competition that if she can win, she will raise her standing. She will be more than just what she is. I loved this book. And I'm not sure why. When I was done reading this, it felt like a book that was important. Now, could it be because a large chunk of my family on one side of my family is Jewish? Probably, maybe. But this felt like a book that was really important. And it felt, I'm going to straight up be honest, it was a really bittersweet ending, and not a lot of happy things happen in it. Like, just, it's a be careful of the mood you go into this with type of book. But it resonated so hard with me that I had to give it a full 5 stars. Okay, the next book I read that is a 5-star, I do not physically own. It was on Kindle. I'll insert a picture somewhere here, hopefully over my hand, so this doesn't look stupid. And that was Lord of Eternal Night by Ben Alderson. There was so much about this book I loved. This book was everything I love in a book. It was LGBTQIA, in that it was a gay romance. It was vampires. It was witches. And it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I didn't realize when I got it that that's what it was. I thought it was just a romance between vampire and witch. And as I read it, I went, this feels Beauty and the Beast to me. And then they got to the library scene, and yes, it had the library scene. And I was like, wait a minute. For all that it is not a typical retelling, it has all of the beats of the story you would want. And trust me when I tell you, the end is not what you expect. So I feel like if you don't want the stereotypical retelling, but still want that vibe, this is. Next, we have As Old as Time by Liz Braswell. This is part of the Disney Twisted Tales collection. And the tagline of this is, what if Belle's mother had cursed the beast? Boy, did they really. That was what they were going for. We'll start with It's Beauty and the Beast. We've covered this, that I enjoy these style books. They really fleshed out the world that Beauty and the Beast took place in. They made it very much feel like it could be old France in our world, but there was part of it that was the magical side. And that part of it was where her mother came in. It spends a good portion of the book bouncing between the past and the present. It never feels like it drags. Matter of fact, I almost liked the past a bit more, just because I like the world building. I like the way they dealt with issues. Very much part of this book felt like it was touching on things like systematic racism, that kind of thing, against the magical people. They never made anyone perfect. Everyone felt like a real flawed person. Belle was delightfully Belle. A little more. She just didn't let things happen to her. Even when she was like, yes, I'll stay, release my father, she was like, but I got things to say. It was really good. I think if you like Disney, and I think if you like a little more adult but not adult, this would be really good way to go. And it's not a bad introduction to the Twisted Tales. Our next book is The Sword by Jean Johnson. This was going to be a 5-star. This was a reread, and I have enjoyed it every time I read it. I have, not even joking, read this about 10 times since I've known of its existence, so over 17 years. The Sword is the first in the Brothers of Destiny, I believe. Sons of Destiny. And this follows the eldest of 8 brothers named Saber, a woman who is drawn from our world into his, named Kelly. And boy, do they not get along when they first meet. He's pissed off because he's afraid she's going to bring a curse because prophecies are very much real in his world. And she's pissed off because she's surrounded by a bunch of dudes who don't wear shirts all day and she can't speak the language. She is amazing and I love her as a character. Kelly does so many of the things that are like reenactment, Renaissance, sewing, cooking, but she can fight because she was taught how to defend herself, and she grew up in a world where she had to defend herself. So the first time she meets them, she's immediately going, protect myself, screw it. I will be the first to say this is an adult novel. That being said, it does not come until, I'd say, probably a good chunk toward the end of the book, like last third. The characters are amazing. The plot is pretty good, considering I never expect much from romance because they are formulaic. That being said, this felt different, and it still kind of feels different. And they set it up really well for the next book, and I find that is the case with these books. Each one felt very well set up for the next while being a complete story in and of itself. Our next book is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I had seen a lot of people reading this. I'd seen the cover, which is gorgeous, and it just seemed my vibe, so I picked it up. Look at the pretty edges. They're just painted a solid color, and they're still gorgeous. And so I picked it up and I started reading it, and this was the vibe I needed. It follows a girl named Killa. After something happens, she returns to her home island. She starts a shop. The front is not what she's actually selling. She opens a spell shop under the guise of a jam shop. And first off, that's delightful to me. I love it. I love anything that has to do with magic. I think what got me first in this book was her companion Kaz, who is just sarcastic and delightful. I love him. He's amazing. And then she gets another companion later on that is also delightful. I felt like the romance in it was kind of second fiddle to her learning to reincorporate into this island life that she had left behind, and I'm okay with that. I did not mind the way that played out. It was very cozy, very much made me wish I could go have my own garden. I will say, in the latter half, there are a lot of plot elements that are introduced that feel very rushed or not thought out, or like she wanted to write them, but she knew they wouldn't be enough for another book, so she tossed them on the tail end of this, which for some people might be a deal breaker. It wasn't for me. I had already enjoyed so much of the book that it didn't really bother me. Our next 5-star book was A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a Persephone and Hades retelling, and that is pretty much all I needed to love this book. I'm not kidding. That is pretty much where I stand on, do you want me to love a book? Is it a Hades Persephone retelling? Persephone has attempted to separate her life from her mother, although that is failing horrendously. But due to a job she wants, she gets entangled with Hades, where she makes a deal with him. And I won't say much more than that other than, yes, it is super adult. Yes, it is delightful watching Persephone go from a meek, unable to stand up for herself person to someone who literally looked the goddess of growth and harvest in the eyes and went, no. I loved it. Loved Hades in this. He was Hades and I loved him. I really enjoyed that they added extra characters you don't normally see. They added Hecate and Minth. I won't say much more on that because that would be obvious spoilers, but I enjoyed them being in there. It was... This is also the first part of the series, or first book in the series. There are a lot of books after this, plus I think a few side books that aren't necessarily part of the main books. I am going to read the rest of this someday. It is going to happen. If I have to hunt these books down, I will get the rest of them. And our last book, I'm going to do my best to censor for YouTube. Allie Blue, Fireflies. And we're going to take the cover away because that is not a cover you can show on YouTube. Needless to say, it's an adult book. This book is, let's see if I can calm this down to actually talk about it. It is a gay fairy romance. Technically one of them is half fae, but it is about a man who finds out it's very early. It's not really a spoiler. It's just something you find out super early because it's driving the plot, that he is half fae. And a person he met when he was a child is also fae and is there to show him his powers or abilities. Basically, there is another elf, fae lord who is after him, wants him dead, and they need to train him for with his abilities, this, that, and a large chunk of the book is them running and him being taught, and very quickly they fall into bed with each other. Don't expect a slow burn. No, they just, I will admit, it's actually one of the first, actually it might be one of the first LGBTQ books I ever owned. So it is a book I treasure, and I do tend to read it at least every other year, if not once a year, much like The Sword. It's a very simple romance. It's a good book if you're just looking for a decent time, a decent adventure, and nothing complicated. That being said, there is on-screen death, or, well, at least mildly on-screen. I can't remember if it's completely, or you're in the POV of someone else. There is a lot of adult content that gets kind of creative. The ending is happy. I generally prefer to know that the endings are going to be happy in my books because that's just me as a person. But it does deal with a bit of transitioning from one thing you believe you are to another, and then having to deal with the fallout of that. So it's a really good book. It's just, don't expect complicated from it. You're not going to get it. So those were my 5-star reads for 2024. A lot of fantasy, some books that I never thought I'd read. It was great. If you'd like, let me know what some of your 5-star reads of 2024 were, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!